Welcome to the new season of the Live Your Spa Life show. The Spa in Spa Life stands for Seek Power Always, that divine power within you to do what you're here to do. The theme for this season is Freedom Fighter. Amazing people like you share ways to ensure your freedom, physically, financially, spiritually, and in your relationships to create a world-class life. In these times of uncertainty, it's time for you to move past the distractions and start trusting yourself more through your God-given knowingness. No one truly knows better what's best for you than you. In this season, you'll have plenty of examples of people choosing their best life and giving a voice of freedom to those who are also looking to have their best life. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us and being part of the Live Your Spa Life conversation. With us today is Jennifer Vannoy. She is the mother of 5 children and the clinical director of the Wellness Way in Jacksonville, Florida. What people may not know about her is she's also an award-winning published researcher in the American Chiropractic Association Student Journal of Nutrition. She's also graduated valedictorian of her class, and her passion is to empower and inspire people to take control of their health. Jennifer, welcome to the show. And what's one thing that people are surprised to learn about you?
Well, I was going to say that I'm a mom of 5 children because usually no one believes that. But also, I used to be really heavy into CrossFit, and I've won a couple of competitions back when I would do CrossFit. I don't do that anymore.
So fun. I love it. Well, and today, we're talking, our new theme is like freedom fighters and the different ways that people are standing for their freedom. For me, freedom is about choice. So what does freedom mean to you, and in what way do you fight for it?
So freedom to me means that you are sovereign over yourself, that you get to make all of the decisions for yourself with no one else's interference. And the ways that I fight for freedom is really health freedom, because I'm a chiropractor, so a lot of scrutiny on me, but I do believe that everybody has the choice to decide what they want for their health care.
Right. Absolutely. And so, what's your greatest concern for your patients, especially taking alternative paths for their health?
So one of my greatest concerns for my patients is just how uneducated a lot of people are about how their body works. And I see so many people come into my office suffering from things like autoimmune disease, cancer, diabetes, and all of these things really start with inflammation. And if people just knew how inflammation happens and how to get it down in the body, they would be able to live more healthy, more fulfilling lives.
Right. I love that you bring this up, because I think that's part of the scariness that happens, whether it's in the media or just different, traditional ways of being able to, like, everyone has a diagnosis, right? And whatever those titles are, they're just, they're words really when you think about it. And what's changed from the moment you get that diagnosis, what happened to lead to that? What are you doing with that? But at the bottom line, that fear can actually exasperate whatever it is that you have. And coming back to knowing the body, knowing how inflammation affects the body and what that happens, is such an important aspect of people being able to, especially from a health freedom standpoint, is to know how their body works. So what are some of the things that you wish that people understood more about their health?
Well, I wish that people understood that their body was designed to be healthy. It was not designed for disease. So if something happens and you get a diagnosis, which personally, I can't stand diagnoses, because a lot of times people attach themselves to that diagnosis and it becomes their life, and they just think there's no way out of it. But there is a way out of that diagnosis if you just learn to keep yourself healthy, because this body knows exactly what to do. We just have to give it what it needs and remove the inflammatory triggers, and it will heal. It's amazing. I love what I do.
Well, it's so important, that people understand, one, how their body works. And, it's like not one size fits all, right? It's like you got to take into consideration what are all the things that your body experiences, what's your lifestyle, like what are the things that you're eating. I mean, there's so many different components that make up that. And I think one of the things that I think is a disservice to people these days is people are looking outside of themselves so much that they want somebody else to tell them about their body, somebody to fix it, somebody to be able to look at it. And I think you can have practitioners, especially like chiropractors and nutritionists and people that can support you. But at the end of the day, you got to know your own body and how it works and be able to be in communication with those people to be able to support you on a deeper level. And I love how you talk about the fear aspect of it, because that is super important. One of the things that, with fear in general, how is it that you deal with it, and how do you help your parents, or your parents, your patients, right, to be able to move through fear as well?
So fear is not really something that I struggle with too often, but when I do a lot of praying because I want to hear from a higher source, what do you think I should do about this? It just helps calm me down and get me back to my logical brain. But with my patients, it's really just about educating them. When they're afraid, it's why are you afraid? Let's get to the bottom of this. And then let's talk about how this fear is actually creating more problems with your health than it's alleviating, because fear creates a massive release of adrenaline, cortisol, which will totally destroy your health if you don't get that under control in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's so important to get into that conversation. I love that you asked, like, what's at the bottom of it, right? Because a lot of times people have fears that they, maybe they feel fearful because they heard something on the TV, or, somebody said something at a school or work or something like that. And so that starts building on not really a factual basis, right? It's just basically more fear being, I think what are they calling it now? Fear porn. Like there's just so much fear out there that it's just like it becomes addictive, right? It becomes this thing where that people are latching onto it and they're not asking those deeper questions about what led to that fear. And is it fear, do I personally need to be fearful about that, right? And so a lot of the things, in fact, a lot of things that are being prescribed for people to do in reaction to pandemic and things are happening are not necessarily things that help the body or support the body or are more dangerous than the actual, complications themselves, right? And so asking some of these deeper questions are so important. And I think, especially in chiropractic, I think that people are looking at alternative ways to keep their body in alignment, to keep their body healthy, right? And coming from a wellness perspective versus freaking out when you're not doing well, right? And I love how you talk about that the body's meant to be well, right? And there's so much talk about sickness that we forget that our natural state is wellness and getting back to that. So, what is your advice for people to, how can they start looking at things differently and how can they get themselves more healthy?
Yeah, so the first step in looking at things differently is educating yourself. You have to know how this body works. And that's something that at the Wellness Way, we're a network of clinics. We have, I think, 100 clinics across the United States. So we're really big on educating our patients. This is how your body works. And then we have a bunch of specialized testing to help uncover what's creating the inflammation in your body. So one of the things I tell my patients a lot is, what if you're eating a food that's creating inflammation in your body and you're eating that every single day? That creates chronic inflammation. Well, there's one thing that healthcare professionals across the board can agree on, and it's that inflammation is this beginning process of every disease. So that's really, you just got to figure out, what are your inflammatory triggers? What can I do to remove those inflammatory triggers? And how can I support my body the best that I can so that it can heal and repair and get back to a state of health? Because that is what it wants. It's striving for that homeostasis, which is balance.
Right. So in that education and that research, it's so funny. I mean, now you can look something up and you can get very different answers and different feedbacks. And you talk to enough people, one person will tell you one thing, another person will tell you another. And it can be kind of challenging for people to know who to believe and what to listen to and where to go with some of that. And so, a lot of times it's not just a particular food that somebody's eating, but, what's in the food, right? Are there pesticides in the food? Is it organic? How are you preparing it? Are there toxins within like the pan that you're using or the space that you're in, right? There's a lot of investigative questions to be able to ask about people's individual circumstances that help them really determine what choices that they're making for their health. So when people are getting educated and doing their own research in that, what are some of the ways that they can start that, or where can they start looking for answers to educate themselves?
So the easiest way to get started, I believe, is just to limit the amount of toxins that you expose your body to. So there's a really great resource that I send all of my patients to. It's the Environmental Working Group. You can check the safety of all of your personal care products, of your cookware, of your cleaning supplies, just to limit the amount of toxic exposure you're getting from that stuff. And then, a lot of people, there's budgetary concerns with eating organic. So I say, make sure you stick to the Dirty Dozen, which the Environmental Working Group posts on that every year. Don't eat the Dirty Dozen, because that's the ones that have the highest amount of pesticides, and that's going to be the most harmful for your body. There's so many. We have a Wellness Way has a YouTube channel. I mean, yes, there's so much information out there, so it's hard to filter through and decide which one is good and which one is not. I have patients come in all the time and tell me that, but it's really about what is it that connects with you? Like, what is it that you want for your health? Because it's your choice, which is what I always tell my patients. This is your choice, your health. It's a part of what you're free to choose.
Right. Well, and I think that is so important, circling back around and being able to listen to yourself, right? We have this divine intuition that tells us, kind of that gives us the divine nod, or the like, no, doesn't work for me. And when we start noticing, I think part of that research comes from patterns, right? When we start noticing patterns, like when I do this, I feel like this. And a lot of times we don't take a moment to go, you know what? Maybe what I had tasted really good, but 20 minutes later, I didn't feel good, right? And so, starting to look at the signs and being more aware of what that looks like. A lot of people don't wake up and go, oh, I want to, exercise for an hour today, right? What if you took a 5-minute walk, right? So there's things that you can do that can just be a starting point of, we do enough of our own research of, okay, what are the foundational things that a body needs, right? Sleep and water, right? And good nutrition and exercise, right? These are some basic things that we all know. And it's the levels and the kind and the intensity. Like a lot of times people will say, well, I want to lose a certain amount of weight, and, they're not ever getting off the couch. Well, whose fault is that, right? I mean, you can't say that, oh, it's, I'm in lockdown, or I've got these things that are happening. We have choice to move our body around, to choose the foods that we want to have, and to live the life. This is part of the freedom, right? This is the choice of taking responsibility. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about taking that personal responsibility for your health, because there's so much like blame and innuendos, and at the end of the day, it comes down to us choosing for our body. So what would you say about having the aspect of having personal responsibility for your health?
Oh, yes. This is a hard one for a lot of people, to take personal responsibility. I actually have a story of myself taking personal responsibility for my health, because way back in my 20s, I started having a lot of health problems. I had to have my gallbladder taken out. I had to have my appendix taken out. And then it got to the point where they're like, oh, we're going to have to take your colon out too. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second here. Like, pretty sure that one's not expendable. I need that one. So it came down to, my doctors never asked me what kind of food I was eating, or how stressed I was, or if I was getting enough sleep, if I was drinking enough water. They didn't ask those kinds of questions. They're just, take that out, take this medication. all of these other things. And that's really what led me to this more alternative healthcare, because once they told me they were going to take my colon out, I said, I don't think so. I'm going to figure out what is going on with my body and why this stuff is happening. And it really came down to, I was stressing too much. I never exercised. I stopped by Chick-fil-A every single day. I mean, I was doing all the wrong things, but had no idea that I was doing the wrong things. So just those, foundational things. Your body needs sleep to heal and repair. You can't be stressed to the max all the time. That's creating inflammation in your body. That's disrupting your hormones. It's doing a lot of really bad things to you. Are you drinking enough water? Because water is really, really important. Are you exercising? These are things I ask my patients all the time, just in the initial appointment, so we can make sure that we're on the right track. And then a lot of people say, oh, but I don't have time. But you have to make time, because this is your health. And if you don't have your health, what do you have? You're laying on the couch feeling like you're going to die. I mean, I'll take the exercise and the water, thanks.
Right. Well, it's interesting because we're seeing now more than ever people who, appear healthy, right? Coming up with, symptoms and diagnosis and, finding out that their immune system was compromised. And this goes back to that personal responsibility when you start investigating for yourself, by asking yourself some of these deeper questions, right? Because once you start asking them and being honest with yourself, like, what am I, really doing? And am I doing enough of it? And what does that actually look like, to be able to have, to have health freedom is really huge, because, we've all heard the stories, somebody's on, their deathbed, we're all going to have to die, but we can choose whether we suffer, right? And the way that we live our life, really leads up to what that experience is going to look like and how it's going to be for us. And only we can know what that is for ourselves. And, I love how you talk about that the body is, it's meant to be healthy, right? And its true state is that. And so anytime the body is not healthy, either we're doing something to it, right? Mm-hmm. Or we're being exposed to something that is affecting the body. So we have to get investigative. I'm part of a group of people who have learned how to be their own doctor, right? And to be investigative and to ask some of these deeper questions. And so you want to ask the body, hey, if you're feeling, you're having more inflammation or you're feeling certain things going on, don't ignore it. Because one of the things I was told is that, like, the little things become the big things, right? Mm-hmm. And you start having these chronic things that start happening. You want to be able to investigate that for yourself and get it, early on, so that the body can course correct itself and be able to fix itself. So, Jen, how is chiropractic, how is that coming in to help people to come back to that balance in their health?
So I love chiropractic, because the chiropractic philosophy is that there are three things that create inflammation in the body: trauma, toxins, and thoughts. So physical trauma to your body, toxins from your environment or foods that you're eating, and then thoughts, which is mental stress. So the trauma aspect, that's where chiropractors, we adjust people. We want to remove that inflammatory trigger from the spine that's creating inflammation in the nervous system, because that is your master controller. It literally tells your body what to do. With the toxins, that's where we do the specialized testing. There's so much testing you can have done. There's hormone testing, there's food allergy testing, there's stool testing. You can actually get your immune system tested. A lot of people have no idea that that's a thing. There's so much testing that you can do to uncover what type of toxic load that you have on your body and how to remove those toxins. And then the mental stress, that's something where people they really have to take responsibility for that and kind of get that under control. And I always recommend things like yoga, meditation. But if you don't have time for all of that, there's a lot of herbs that can help you with mental stress. There's ashwagandha, California poppy, kava kava, bacopa, CBD. That's a really great option. So right. That is how chiropractic is supposed to work. And a lot of people don't know that. They just think chiropractors, they just adjust you, right? No, we're actually in Florida. We are family practitioners. We are primary care physicians. I can order blood work. I prescribe herbs. I do a lot of different things other than just adjust people.
Right, right. Well, and I think it's important that specifically, back to like testing. A lot of times testing can just be like getting the big diagnosis where there can be a lot of fear in that. I'm curious about, regardless of what the tests come back, because people, a lot of times it comes down to the quality of the test, right? And a lot of times tests are, a range of things of like, oh, you're within the range. Well, but you're still not healthy, right? It's not a healthy range that you have. So a lot of times testing can be misleading. And so regardless of whether a test comes back and it's high or low, isn't it like the same thing that you're doing, regardless of what the test comes back in terms of bringing yourself back into health, of, increasing nutrition. And we talked about, getting the good sleep and getting those things and having the realization of that, because sometimes people can get just tripped up on just the diagnosis itself and being like, I'm in the bad zone. But I think that, regardless of what those test results are, I think encouraging people that no matter where you are, you could be, very low on certain things, but you can always get back to the harmony of the body. It's never too late to get back into the harmony of the body. Have you experienced this?
Yes, I have absolutely experienced where, people usually find me as the last resort because nothing else has worked for them. Right. And that's when they come to me. So they're desperate, they're in pain, their health is suffering. But like you said, it doesn't matter where you are in the health journey, as long as you start somewhere, as long as you start doing some things right. And I always tell my patients, this can be so overwhelming. Let's work by the 1% rule, I call it. We're going to make changes 1% at a time, a little at a time, until we have a really good routine for you and you're feeling fabulous. And you can feel fabulous at any age. We have people from newborns all the way to their 90s that come to my office, and all of them see improvements in their health.
Right. I think there's definitely something to be said about that incremental. And I think that in our fast-paced society, people think like after one visit or one weekend that they're going to turn around, 50 years of doing things that didn't support the body. And so I think having some realistic expectations of having to undo some of the damage that people have done to the body, and, giving it enough time, right? And being able to, yes, build in these different habits and be able to support the body, but also kind of giving yourself a break, right? To know like, hey, you're not going to turn over, many years of choosing things that weren't supportive for you. And I think that's why a lot of people like drop off on things where it's like, oh, I tried this for a day. And
You're right. I have patients who come in and they're like, I did everything you said for a month and I'm not better.
Right.
Well, you've been sick for how long?
Right.
Give it a little bit of time.
Right. And I think that's where part of the mental game comes in. And I'm glad that you mentioned that about the thoughts that we have. And so one, if we know that the body is meant to be healthy, right? And so all the things that we are doing is listening to the body and noticing what's happening around us and what are the things that we're putting in the body and the choices we're making around that, is it actually helping the body do its own job? Or is it actually, making us feel worse and it's actually not really working for us? So it is important to know, hey, what is in everything that we put in our body, and what are, when we start seeing things like, natural flavorings and all these other things. Well, what is that? That's not an actual thing in the world. Like, is it lemon or is it chemicals? Like what's going on here? And so the more we, have that knowledge and we can, keep it simple with that, I think it's really important, because I think people tend to complicate it in a lot of ways. And I think that the more they can really realize what is happening, I think that makes a really big shift. And so especially now in the last couple of years where people have been an all-time high, they're noticing decades of maybe not taking care of themselves. What are some of the things that you're noticing when people are actually being proactive with their health and they're doing things like chiropractic and they're making shifts and changes in their life? What are some of the things that that either you are noticing or that they're noticing about their own health?
Oh, one of my favorite things that patients say when they come in is, I'm sleeping better and I have so much energy and I'm actually able to get through my day without hitting that wall where I crash and I feel like I need a nap. That one makes me really happy. But I also notice, a lot of people think that symptoms are normal. There's no such thing as a normal symptom. It might be common, but you are actually supposed to feel well and vibrant and have energy, and all of these things that we want are attainable if we just do the right things.
Yeah. What a great nuance, because I think what happens, like you said, that it may be normal, but just because you have symptoms doesn't mean that's how the body is supposed to be. And so I think when people start feeling things chronically, they go, well, that's just the way it is, or I'm at a certain age, or certain things happen, and there becomes those excuses. Whereas when you know that the body is supposed to be healthy and you're supposed to, feel good and vibrant and all of those things, I think that it's so important that people have that awareness around that. And so, we talked about the physical body and just, the mindset and just all the different aspects that go into your health. And one of the questions I love to ask the guests on the show, because I think that our environment, our personal environment, has a big impact on us as well. We live differently in the bedroom versus the kitchen or the office. So what is your favorite room in your home and why?
My favorite room is my bathroom because I can lock everybody out of there and have some me time and no one bothers me.
That is so funny. I think anybody who has multiple children, that is one of their favorite escapes. My daughter has 4 children. And so I think once you get beyond 2 and it becomes like a tribe and you have to kind of figure out who needs what attention and how do I figure this out and how can I just grab a little bit of time for myself. And that's actually something, especially with you having 5 children, with people that even have 2 children, sometimes feel like the whole not having enough time to take care of themselves comes into play. What are some of the things that you do to prioritize your own health and also be able to be present for your family?
Well, the number one thing that I do is I actually listed my priorities out. So I always tell my patients, if you have 15 priorities, that is way too many. You shouldn't have more than 6. And then I make sure that I schedule in time to hit all those priorities. Because if I don't schedule it in, it isn't going to happen.
Yes.
Not.
That is such an important piece of advice. I'm always telling, my clients, if it's not on your calendar, it doesn't happen. If you don't know what your values are, and you don't see them on your calendar, then you're not living the life that's in alignment with those, right? And so having that awareness around what is important to you. And, you are absolutely right. I've talked to people that have like 20 things on their list. And what happens is that even if they completed 19 of them, they still feel bad about the one that they didn't do. And so if we set ourselves up for success and say, hey, I'm going to focus on these 3 priorities, I'm going to make these, couple things happen, and then you feel the success of that, right? That also helps support the body, right? Because you feel good about an intention that you set, you're living in integrity with yourself, and you just feel better, right? So there's a lot of different aspects that we can look at in our life that, and one of the things I definitely don't want to have people take away from this is if you are in a place where people have labeled you, or you're in a bad zone, or you're unhealthy, or all of those things, it's not to have you feel bad. You should actually be glad that you now have the awareness of where you are really, and not to play head games about, not listening to your body or not knowing that you can make changes, that you can absolutely reach out to people like Dr. Jen and be able to get the support to do something differently. So, I know, Dr. Jen, people are going to want to reach out and to connect with you. How can they do that?
They can find me on Facebook, The Wellness Way Jacksonville. They could find us on Instagram. We have a Wellness Way Jacksonville on Instagram, but they can also go to our website, thewellnessway.com, because there's going to be people who are really far away and maybe they want to find a clinic close to them. And we have Wellness Way practitioners all over the place. So you can just go in there and you can find a doctor close to you. You can read about them. You can stalk them. I always encourage people, stalk them on Facebook. Make sure that you feel a connection with that doctor before you go. Because if you don't feel connected to your doctor, you're probably not going to follow their recommendations, and then you're probably not going to get better. So
definitely good advice on that. I have a friend of mine who's a doctor, who wrote a book, How Healthy is Your Doctor? Because we've had many questions about that. And if your doctor's not healthy, do you really want to take advice from a not healthy doctor, right? So this is the part where it's a collaboration. Like, we have to take responsibility for our own journey and do our part, right? To know, hey, is somebody in alignment with ourselves? Like, is this a person that we want to be able to help us and support us and be able to do that? So any final thoughts for our listeners here as far as, staying more in alignment with their health freedom?
I think that I want to say something, but it's not coming to the forefront of my brain. I just really want people to understand that health freedom doesn't necessarily mean anti-medicine. That is not at all the case, because I do have people who come into my office and I tell them, yes, you absolutely need that medication for the time being, but let's figure out what started this fire inside of your body in the first place so that we can get you back to health so you don't have to take that medicine, because medicines were never meant to be taken forever. Even the manufacturer says they're toxic because every single one of them comes with negative side effects, right? So I just want people to be encouraged to that there is hope. When I go over a test read with a patient, it's never, there's no hope for you, or this is going to be you for the rest of your life. Like they told me, there's no way to cure your autoimmune condition. We have to take your colon out. Well, that was 7 years ago and I still have it. So there is hope for you. It's not hopeless. That's what I want people to know.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so important for people to realize that. And I'm so glad that you pointed it out, because medications were never meant to be forever. And how many times do you hear of grandparents that are on like 20 different things and they don't even know what they're on. And a lot of times they got another prescription because it was for the side effects of the one before that. And they don't even remember the original reason of why they got that. So we have to really look at, what is the totality of somebody's health? And, is it making them better or is it moving them backwards? So, looking at the totality of that, knowing that it's not hopeless, you can definitely shift and change anything that's out there for your health. That is part of choice and that is part of freedom. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom with us today.
Thank you.
You got it. And for our listeners out there, today, this is your action here, is to take an inventory of your health. How are you feeling? What are the habits that you're doing? What are you looking at? What can you do outside of what you maybe normally would do? Maybe it's chiropractic, maybe it's, doing a different kind of exercise. Maybe you've been doing the same thing all the time and it's not shifting or helping with you. Maybe you're changing what's one meal in your life, right? What is that one thing that you can shift in your health so that you're at choice with your health and that you can change how that can be? So please share this to all your friends so that they can also be part of this with you, to look at what changes they can make. And if each of us individually look at our health and make one positive thing, just think about the energy of how many more healthy people there will be out in the world. So until we connect again, live your spa life and be in freedom. Bye for now.